Part 4, Chapter 4, Section 2 of Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Translated by Constance Garnett. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Expatriate in Bangor, Maine. Part 5, Chapter 4, Section 2. Again Sonia tried to say something, but did not speak. "I asked you to go with me yesterday because you are all I have left." "Go where?" asked Sonia timidly. "Not to steal and not to murder, don't be anxious," he smiled bitterly. "We are so different. And you know, Sonia, it's only now, only this moment that I understand where I asked you to go with me yesterday. Yesterday when I said it, I did not know where. I asked you for one thing, I came to you for one thing, not to leave me. You won't leave me, Sonia?" She squeezed his hand. "And why? Why did I tell her? Why did I let her know?" he cried a minute later in despair, looking with infinite anguish at her. "Here you expect an explanation from me, Sonia. You are sitting and waiting for it, I see that. But what can I tell you? You won't understand and will only suffer misery on my account. Well, you are crying and embracing me again, why do you do it? Because I couldn't bear my burden and have come to throw it on another. You suffer too, and I shall feel better. And can you love such a mean wretch?" "But aren't you suffering too?" cried Sonia. Again a wave of the same feeling surged into his heart, and again for an instant softened it. "Sonia, I have a bad heart, take note of that. It may explain a great deal. I have come because I am bad. There are men who wouldn't have come, but I am a coward and a mean wretch. But never mind, that's not the point. I must speak now, but I don't know how to begin." He paused and sank into thought. "Ah, we are so different!" he cried again. "We are not alike. And why did I come? I shall never forgive myself that." "No, no, it was a good thing you came," cried Sonia. "It's better I should know, far better." He looked at her with anguish. "What if it were really that?" he said, as though reaching a conclusion. "Yes, that's what it was. I wanted to become a Napoleon, that is why I killed her. Do you understand now?" "No," Sonia whispered naively and timidly. "Only speak, speak, I shall understand, I shall understand in myself," she kept begging him. "You'll understand? Very well, we shall see." He paused and was for some time lost in meditation. "It was like this. I asked myself one day this question: what if Napoleon, for instance, had happened to be in my place, and if he had not had Toulon, nor Egypt, nor the passage of Mont Blanc to begin his career with, but instead of all those picturesque and monumental things, there had simply been some ridiculous old hag, a pawnbroker, who had to be murdered too to get money from her trunk, for his career, you understand. Well, would he have brought himself to that if there had been no other means? Wouldn't he have felt a pang at its being so far from monumental and sinful too? Well, I must tell you that I worried myself fearfully over that question, so that I was awfully ashamed when I guessed at last, all of a sudden, somehow, that it would not have given him the least pang, that it would not even have struck him that it was not monumental, that he would not have seen that there was anything in it to pause over, and that, if he had had no other way, he would have strangled her in a minute, without thinking about it. Well, I too left off thinking about it, murdered her, following his example. And that's exactly how it was. Do you think it funny? Yes, Sonia, the funniest thing of all is that perhaps that's just how it was." Sonia did not think it at all funny. "You had better tell me straight out, without examples," she begged, still more timidly and scarcely audibly. He turned to her, looked sadly at her and took her hands. "You are right again, Sonia. Of course that's all nonsense, it's almost all talk. You see, you know of course that my mother has scarcely anything. My sister happened to have a good education and was condemned to drudge as a governess. All their hopes were centred on me. I was a student, but I couldn't keep myself at the university and was forced for a time to leave it. Even if I had lingered on like that, in 10 or 12 years I might, with luck, hope to be some sort of teacher or clerk with a salary of 1,000 roubles." He repeated it as though it were a lesson. "And by that time my mother would be worn out with grief and anxiety, and I could not succeed in keeping her in comfort, while my sister... well, my sister might well have fared worse. And it's a hard thing to pass everything by, all one's life. to turn one's back upon everything, to forget one's mother and decorously accept the insults inflicted on one's sister. Why should one? When one has buried them to burden oneself with others, wife and children, and to leave them again without a farthing? So I resolved to gain possession of the old woman's money and to use it for my first years without worrying my mother, to keep myself at the university and for a little while after leaving it, and to do this all on a broad, thorough scale, so as to build up a completely new career and enter upon a new life of independence. Well, that's all. Well, of course, in killing the old woman I did wrong. Well, that's enough." He struggled to the end of his speech in exhaustion and let his head sink. "Oh, that's not it! That's not it!" Sonia cried in distress. "How could one? No, that's not right, not right." "You see yourself that it's not right, but I've spoken truly, it's the truth." "As though that could be the truth! Good God!" "I've only killed a louse, Sonia, a useless, loathsome, harmful creature." "A human being! A louse?" "I too know it wasn't a louse," he answered, looking strangely at her. "But I am talking nonsense, Sonia," he added. "I've been talking nonsense a long time. That's not it, you are right there. There were quite other causes for it. I haven't talked to anyone for so long, Sonia, my head aches dreadfully now." His eyes shone with feverish brilliance. He was almost delirious. An uneasy smile strayed on his lips. His terrible exhaustion could be seen through his excitement. Sonia saw how he was suffering. She, too, was growing dizzy, and he talked so strangely. It seemed somehow comprehensible, but yet... but how? How? Good God!" And she wrung her hands in despair. "No, Sonia, that's not it," he began again suddenly, raising his head, as though a new and sudden train of thought had struck and, as it were, roused him. "That's not it. Better, imagine yes, it's certainly better imagine that I am vain, envious, malicious, base, vindictive and well, perhaps with a tendency to insanity. Let's have it all out at once. They've talked of madness already, I noticed. I told you just now I could not keep myself at the university. But do you know that perhaps I might have done? My mother would have sent me what I needed for the fees, and I could have earned enough for clothes, boots and food, no doubt. Lessons had turned up at half a rouble. Razumihin works, but I turned sulky and wouldn't. Yes, sulkiness, that's the right word for it. I sat in my room like a spider. You've been in my den, you've seen it. And do you know, Sonia, that low ceilings in tiny rooms cramp the soul and the mind. Ah, how I hated that garret! And yet I wouldn't go out of it, I wouldn't, on purpose. I didn't go out for days together, and I wouldn't work, I wouldn't even eat. I just lay there doing nothing. If Nastasya brought me anything, I ate it. If she didn't, I went all day without. I wouldn't ask on purpose, from sulkiness. At night I had no light, I lay in the dark, and I wouldn't earn money for candles. I ought to have studied, but I sold my books. And the dust lies an inch thick on the notebooks on my table. I preferred lying still and thinking, and I kept thinking. And I had dreams all the time, strange dreams of all sorts, no need to describe. Only then I began to fancy that... No, that's not it. Again I am telling you wrong. You see, I kept asking myself then, why am I so stupid that if others are stupid, and I know they are, yet I won't be wiser? Then I saw, Sonia, that if one waits for everyone to get wiser, it will take too long. Afterwards I understood that that would never come to pass, that men won't change and that nobody can alter it, and that it's not worth wasting effort over it. Yes, that's so. That's the law of their nature, Sonia, that's so. And I know now, Sonia, that whoever is strong in mind and spirit will have power over them. Anyone who is greatly daring is right in their eyes. He who despises most things will be a lawgiver among them, and he who dares most of all will be most in the right. So it has been till now, and so it will always be. A man must be blind not to see it. Though Raskolnikov looked at Sonia as he said this, he no longer cared whether she understood or not. The fever had complete hold of him. He was in a sort of gloomy ecstasy; he certainly had been too long without talking to anyone. Sonia felt that his gloomy creed had become his faith and code. "I divined then, Sonia," he went on eagerly, "that power is only vouchsafed to the man who dares to stoop and pick it up. There is only one thing needful. One has only to dare. Then, for the first time in my life, an idea took shape in my mind which no one had ever thought of before me, no one. I saw clear as daylight how strange it is that not a single person living in this mad world has had the daring to go straight for it all and send it flying to the devil. I... I wanted to have the daring, and I killed her. I only wanted to have the daring, Sonia. That was the whole cause of it." "Oh, hush, hush!" cried Sonia, clasping her hands. "You turned away from God and God has smitten you, has given you over to the devil." "Then, Sonia, when I used to lie there in the dark and all this became clear to me, was it a temptation of the devil, eh?" "Hush, don't laugh, blasphemer! You don't understand, you don't understand! Oh, God, he won't understand!" "Hush, Sonia, I am not laughing. I know myself that it was the devil leading me. Hush, Sonia, hush!" he repeated with gloomy insistence. "I know it all, I have thought it all over and over and whispered it all over to myself, lying there in the dark. I've argued it all over with myself, every point of it, and I know it all. And how sick I was then of going over it all. I have kept wanting to forget it and make a new beginning, Sonia, and leave off thinking. And you don't suppose that I went into it headlong like a fool. I went into it like a wise man, and that was just my destruction. And you mustn't suppose that I didn't know, for instance, that if I began to question myself whether I had the right to gain power, I certainly hadn't the right, or that if I asked myself whether a human being is a louse, it proved that it wasn't so for me, though it might be for a man who would go straight to his goal without asking questions. If I worried myself all those days wondering whether Napoleon would have done it or not, I felt clearly, of course, that I wasn't Napoleon. I had to endure all the agony of that battle of ideas, Sonia, and I longed to throw it off. I wanted to murder without casuistry, to murder for my own sake, for myself alone. I didn't want to lie about it even to myself. It wasn't to help my mother I did the murder, that's nonsense. I didn't do the murder to gain wealth and power and to become a benefactor of mankind. Nonsense! I simply did it. I did the murder for myself alone, and whether I became a benefactor to others, or spent my life like a spider, catching men in my web and sucking the life out of men, I couldn't have cared at that moment. And it was not the money I wanted, Sonia, when I did it. It was not so much the money I wanted, but something else. I know it all now. Understand me. Perhaps I should never have committed a murder again. I wanted to find out something else. It was something else led me on. I wanted to find out then and quickly whether I was a louse like everybody else or a man. Whether I can step over barriers or not. Whether I dare stoop to pick up or not. Whether I am a trembling creature or whether I have the right. "To kill? Have the right to kill?" Sonia clasped her hands. "Ach, Sonia!" he cried irritably, and seemed about to make some retort, but was contemptuously silent. "Don't interrupt me, Sonia. I want to prove one thing only: that the devil led me on then, and he has shown me since that I had not the right to take that path, because I am just such a louse as all the rest. He was mocking me, and here I've come to you now, welcome your guest. If I were not a louse, should I have come to you? Listen, when I went then to the old woman's, I only went to try. You may be sure of that." "And you murdered her!" "But how did I murder her? Is that how men do murders? Do men go to commit a murder as I went then? I will tell you some day how I went. Did I murder the old woman? I murdered myself, not her. I crushed myself once for all, for ever. But it was the devil that killed that old woman, not I. Enough, enough, Sonia, enough! Let me be!" he cried in a sudden spasm of agony. "Let me be!" He leaned his elbows on his knees and squeezed his head in his hands as in a vise. "What suffering!" A wail of anguish broke from Sonia. "Well, what am I to do now?" he asked, suddenly raising his head and looking at her with a face hideously distorted by despair. "What are you to do?" she cried, jumping up, and her eyes that had been full of tears suddenly began to shine. "Stand up!" She seized him by the shoulder. He got up, looking at her almost bewildered. "Go at once, this very minute! Stand at the cross‐roads! Bow down! First kiss the earth which you have defiled, and then bow down to all the world and say to all men aloud, 'I am a murderer!' Then God will send you life again. Will you go? Will you go?" she asked him, trembling all over, snatching his two hands, squeezing them tight in hers and gazing at him with eyes full of fire. He was amazed at her sudden ecstasy. "You mean Siberia, Sonia? I must give myself up?" he asked gloomily. "Suffer and expiate your sin by it. That's what you must do."
"No, I am not going to them, Sonia." "But how will you go on living? What will you live for?" cried Sonia. "How is it possible now? Why, how can you talk to your mother? Oh, what will become of them now? But what am I saying? You have abandoned your mother and your sister already. He has abandoned them already. Oh, God!" she cried. "Why, he knows it all himself. How? How can he live by himself? What will become of you now?" "Don't be a child, Sonia," he said softly. "What wrong have I done them? Why should I go to them? What should I say to them? That's only a phantom. They destroy men by millions themselves and look on it as a virtue. They are knaves and scoundrels, Sonia. I am not going to them. And what should I say to them? That I murdered her, but did not dare to take the money and hid it under a stone?" he added with a bitter smile. "Why, they would laugh at me and would call me a fool for not getting it. A coward and a fool! They wouldn't understand and they don't deserve to understand. Why should I go to them? I won't! Don't be a child, Sonia." "It will be too much for you to bear, too much," she repeated, holding out her hands in despairing supplication. "Perhaps I've been unfair to myself," he observed gloomily, pondering. "Perhaps after all I am a man and not a louse, and I've been in too great a hurry to condemn myself. I'll make another fight for it." A haughty smile appeared on his lips. "What a burden to bear! And your whole life, your whole life!" "I shall get used to it," he said grimly and thoughtfully. "Listen," he began a minute later, "stop crying. It's time to talk of the facts. I've come to tell you that the police are after me, on my track." "Ah!" Sonia cried in terror. "Well, why do you cry out? You want me to go to Siberia and now you are frightened? But let me tell you, I shall not give myself up. I shall make a struggle for it and they won't do anything to me. They've no real evidence. Yesterday I was in great danger and believed I was lost. But to day things are going better. All the facts they know can be explained two ways, that's to say, I can turn their accusations to my credit, do you understand? And I shall, for I've learnt my lesson. But they will certainly arrest me. If it had not been for something that happened, they would have done so to day for certain. Perhaps even now they will arrest me to day. But that's no matter, Sonia. They'll let me out again, for there isn't any real proof against me, and there won't be. I give you my word for it. And they can't convict a man on what they have against me. Enough. I only tell you that you may know. I will try to manage somehow to put it to my mother and sister so that they won't be frightened. My sister's future is secure, however, now, I believe, and my mother's must be too. Well, that's all. Be careful, though. Will you come and see me in prison when I am there?" "Oh, I will, I will." They sat side by side, both mournful and dejected, as though they had been cast up by the tempest alone on some deserted shore. He looked at Sonia and felt how great was her love for him, and strange to say he felt it suddenly burdensome and painful to be so loved. Yes, it was a strange and awful sensation. On his way to see Sonia he had felt that all his hopes rested on her. He expected to be rid of at least part of his suffering, and now, when all her heart turned towards him, he suddenly felt that he was immeasurably unhappier than before. "Sonia," he said, "you'd better not come and see me when I am in prison." Sonia did not answer, she was crying. Several minutes passed. "Have you a cross on you?" she asked, as though suddenly thinking of it. He did not at first understand the question. "No, of course not. Here, take this one, of cypress wood. I have another, a copper one that belonged to Lizaveta. I changed with Lizaveta. She gave me her cross and I gave her my little ikon. I will wear Lizaveta's now and give you this. Take it. It's mine, you know," she begged him. "We will go to suffer together, and together we will bear our cross." "Give it me," said Raskolnikov. He did not want to hurt her feelings, but immediately he drew back the hand he held out for the cross. "Not now, Sonia. Better later," he added to comfort her. "Yes, yes, better," she repeated with conviction. "When you go to meet your suffering, then put it on. You will come to me, I'll put it on you. We will pray and go together." At that moment someone knocked 3 times at the door. "Sofya Semyonovna, may I come in?" they heard in a very familiar and polite voice. Sonia rushed to the door in a fright. The flaxen head of Mr. Lebeziatnikov appeared at the door. End of Part 5, Chapter 4. Recording by Expatriate in Bangor, Maine.